Tansei, I'm Chris Sanachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Saskatchewan's Serious Incident Response Team is investigating another fatal officer-involved shooting, this time in Fishing Lake First Nation. On Tuesday, Saskatchewan RCMP say they received a report of an armed man driving a stolen school van on the Fishing Lake First Nation. The man was wanted for a long list of armed robberies across east central Saskatchewan. At 1 p.m., the van was seen traveling at a high rate of speed. Officers tried to stop it, but it kept going. The chase finally ended with a shootout in a field at 1:45 p.m. The driver was found injured in the van. He was declared deceased by EMS. The man has been identified as 34-year-old Joseph Joey Desjardins, and his family has been notified. Desjardins is now the 9th First Nation person to die while involved with police or RCMP since August 29th. The family of a man whose death is under investigation by Ontario's police watchdogs say they have concerns about his interactions with police and paramedics prior to his death. The Ontario Special Investigations Unit, or SIU, announced on September 16th they are investigating the death of a man taken into police custody in Pickle Lake. One of the man's daughters has confirmed to APTN News that the man was her father, Ronald Skunk, of Mishkogaming First Nation. According to the SIU press release, Ontario Provincial Police attended a business in Pickle Lake on the afternoon of Wednesday, September 11th. While dealing with a group of individuals, officers noticed that someone behind them required medical attention. Paramedics assessed the individual and medically cleared him. He was then arrested and taken to the detachment. While there, he went into medical distress and was airlifted to hospital in Thunder Bay, where he died on Saturday, September 14th. Family members have started a GoFundMe to help pay for funeral costs. They say Skunk, who was 59 years old, fell and hit his head. A family member who was there voiced their concerns to the attending officers, but were ignored. They say police told them they were taking him to the detachment to, quote, sleep it off. Skunk's death is the 8th death of a First Nation person that occurred between August 29th and September 18th. All of the deaths are now the focus of investigations by provincial police watchdogs. An update now on a story we first reported in 2022. On June 4th of that year, a group of people were marching near the former site of St. Mary's Residential School in Mission, British Columbia, to raise awareness about children who attended the school. A man drove a truck into the group, hitting 4 people, sending 2 to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The driver did not stop, and the incident was caught on camera. The next day, 77-year-old Richard Manuel turned himself into the RCMP. He was charged with dangerous operation of a motor vehicle. Manuel pled not guilty, and his case has been winding its way through the courts. This week, he was found guilty. Sentencing is set for a later date. Journalist Robert Jago has been following the story.
Overall, yes, I'm relieved. It was just, it's been stretching on since July, this verdict. Like, they keep pushing it off. So I'm glad that it finally happened, and I'm glad that it wasn't like extra traumatizing the week before, Truth and Reconciliation Day.
The Liberal government has launched Canada's first ever action plan to combat rising hate crimes. The plan will invest $273 million over the next 6 years to support more than 20 initiatives to identify and combat hate crimes and support victims.
Canadians, this means better data tracking on hate crimes through StatsCan, increase resources for law enforcement so that they can understand the needs and concerns of diverse communities, reforms and education for our justice system to better inform how to deal with hate crimes, more funding to financially support survivors and victims of hate crimes, to ensure communities have the resources they need to feel safe and secure.
The government says the rise in hate crimes is disproportionately impacting a number of vulnerable groups, including Indigenous peoples, racialized people, and religious minorities. The Alberta RCMP are asking the public for help in locating 15-year-old Ava Three Fingers. Three Fingers is originally from Camrose, Alberta, but might be in Edmonton, Calgary, or in Musquecheese, Alberta. The teen has not been seen since July 30th near Camrose. RCMP say there is concern for her well-being. Three Fingers is 5'3" and 120 pounds. Anyone with information on her location can contact the Camrose RCMP or Crime Stoppers. Discussions over the First Nations Clean Drinking Water Act, known as Bill C-61, continued in a House of Commons committee. This week, chiefs from Ontario and one from Saskatchewan voiced their opinions on the proposed bill. Here's Annette Francis with an overview.
During the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee, Ontario Regional Chief Abram Benedict said Ontario First Nations are the most impacted by the failure to provide clean drinking water. His message to MPs is the Act, while it's not perfect, must pass.
There are entire generations that have been unable to see clean drinking water from their taps. And I recently had an opportunity to be in Escandaga, which is one of the communities that has had a boil water advisory for 30 years. And so when you put that in context, there's been children that have been born, raised, and now are adults and still have had to live with boil water advisories. And so in today's context, that is extremely chilling and unacceptable.
First Nations consultant Irving LeBlanc said watershed protection zones and jurisdictional issues have to be dealt with within this bill.
The federal government has to come in there, and as it's been said, federal government has to come in and I know this was mentioned, to work, make sure provinces work collaboratively with First Nations in terms of establishing these protection zones, because water doesn't end at the boundary. Water has no boundaries. So I think it's going to be one major area that will need to be looked at clearly.
NDP MP Nikki Ashton questioned the chiefs about a current court action by the Shamattawa First Nation in northern Manitoba. 2 years ago, it started a class action lawsuit over the federal government's failure to provide clean drinking water. Chief Erica Boudin of Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan said in spite of this, the bill needs to pass.
We have opportunity with this bill, even if the government is currently faced with having to do the right thing. Yes, we acknowledge that the court has stated that they do the right thing, but we must still work together in order to ensure that the death toll goes down, that we have the safe water drinking, that we have adequate funding, that there are legal tools in our toolbox with the provincial and the federal and the First Nations.
The committee will continue its study on Bill C-61 on Thursday. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Now to today's website poll question. We ask, have you or someone you know ever relied on government housing benefits? Yes, no, or unsure? Go to www.aptnnews.ca to have your say. The Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg is celebrating 10 years. We'll tell you how they are bringing more awareness to truth and reconciliation. That story when we're back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. As part of our ongoing coverage for National Truth and Reconciliation Week, we take a look at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. They just celebrated 10 years of being open to the public, even opening a permanent space for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's witness blanket. But as T.R. Whitley shows us now, it wasn't always a space the Indigenous community embraced, especially when it came to the telling of the Indian residential school system.
Feasting together is what Indigenous communities have done for centuries following traditional ceremonies. This custom, however, is fairly new inside this institution, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. This honoring is part of the museum giving the Truth and Reconciliation Witness Blanket a permanent home. Carrie Newman created this piece in 2014 around the time this museum opened.
Thinking about all of the stories that are told here and the weight and the significance.
Down the hall beyond the beat, one of many exhibits showcasing Indigenous people and culture over the past decade. Outside, the building sits on the banks of the Red River at the Forks near downtown Winnipeg. CMHR CEO Aisha Khan knows the significance of this location.
Treaty 1 territory, the birthplace and homeland of the Red River Métis, to be getting our water from Shoal Lake. It's never lost on me.
Khan started here in 2020. One of her missions, making traditional ceremony a vital part of maintaining this space.
So part of our growth really has been to understand our own connection, our own relationship with land, with all of creation, to open ourselves to other ways of knowing and being, to Indigenous ways.
This wasn't always the case here. Controversies plagued the museum since before it even opened.
Historic moment in the story of human rights in Canada.
Winter 2008, a sod turning with Canada and Manitoba politicians of the time. Manitoba First Nations communities felt snubbed for not being included.
Where you finish this building up, I hope.
In 2011, First Nations members from Shoal Lake number 39 protested here. They said Winnipeg's drinking water came from their territory but left them with contaminated water. That same year, while excavating the site, workers discovered 1,000-year-old tribal artifacts. The community was in an uproar, saying proper traditional ceremony wasn't done. Then in 2013, less than a year before it opened, museum officials said genocide would not be used to describe the residential school's era. Situations that led to this. September 19, 2014. Protests on opening day. Many saying the museum was sugarcoating history, making light of issues like residential schools. Amongst the crowd was activist Michael Champagne.
I remember being so upset as the doors opened because there was such conflict.
Now, exactly 10 years later,
we are willing to witness our institutions begin to bend.
Champagne is one of 5 people bearing witness to the ongoing relationship between this museum, the witness blanket, and the truth-telling of Indigenous stories.
The museum is learning how to be a good relative, and so to me, having the witness blanket here and seeing all of the breadth of Indigenous connections that the museum has committed to demonstrates to me that they actually listened. My hope is that this witness blanket will witness in the next 10 years the drastic reduction of Indigenous children in care in Canada and see all of the children come home.
Behind the scenes all those years was Chandra Erlinson, Director of Indigenous Relations and Community Engagement.
I'd call it a dark time. My family, my relatives, my community asking why I was working here.
She was recruited to work here long before the doors opened, her job mainly consisting of bridge building.
The sanitation of the language around genocide, outright resistance to include that in some of the early messaging was really hard for community, and it was very difficult during that time to be gaining trust when we're working with Indigenous folks in all kinds of ways to build content and tell stories, true stories.
How big are your hands in comparison now to what they were then?
Stories like this one Newman shares of his own daughter's handprints on the witness blanket door from a decade ago when she was 4.
I think about how I started making this for my dad, like in honor of him. I wonder, how does that translate for her? How much stronger does she become?
Stronger in truth, something activists set out to do many moons ago. To ensure traditions and history of the original peoples and their land are at the forefront of this space dedicated to human rights. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Truth and Reconciliation Day is less than a week away, and a school community in New Brunswick held a massive celebration in advance of the national holiday. CTV's Derek Haggett was also there.
Hundreds of students from 11 different schools gathered in Salisbury today as part of Truth and Reconciliation Week. Members of First Nations communities held a Maui Omi, or powwow, a Mi'kmaq ceremony with song, dance, and prayers. The celebration honors Indigenous traditions while promoting truth and reconciliation, and every child matters.
It's very nice to see a lot of kids in orange today, and it's nice to honor that throughout the year and not only have that just that one day of reconciliation.
The event was a partnership between the town and the Anglophone East School District, who are trying to raise awareness within their communities.
Get to learn and to know that this relationship between First Nations people and the settlers of this land is integral, it's important.
It really speaks to the work we're doing system-wide in relation to truth and reconciliation, working with our elder and residents, working with our principals.
The cultural event, a real sense of pride for the municipality.
I'm just swelling right now. And by that, just everything we continue to do, we keep growing and growing. But yeah, just see so many people that came to our community, again, to celebrate culture.
The celebration honors First Nations traditions passed down through generations while educating children about Indigenous culture.
But this was really cool to have a hands-on experience, because normally we're used to watching videos and such about these in class, and it was really cool to see it here in person.
A time for education and understanding, but also for some fun.
We went in a big circle, we danced, we did like a big dance, and I've listened to lots of music.
A wonderful day of peace and friendship for everyone. Derek Haggett, CTV News, Salisbury, New Brunswick.
Jim Poitras, a Cree, Dakota, and Métis artist and author from the Treaty 4 territory in Saskatchewan, will join us next from Germany to talk a little bit about his life journey. That interview after the break. Stick around. St. John's 11, Charlottetown 16. Nain 11, Cartwright 8. 14 in Gaspé, Saguenay 16. Ottawa 14, Peterborough 18. Timmins 24, Sioux Lookout 16. The Paw 15, Norway House 15 as well. Gimli 19, Barons River 18. Yorkton, Sunny and 18, Saskatoon 17. Buffalo Narrows 16, Meadow Lake 18. 18 in Fort Chipewyan, 21 in High Level. Red Deer 29, Edmonton 26. 24 in Penticton, Campbell River 16. 12 in Fort Nelson, Dees Lake, Sunny and 10. Watson Lake 11, Mayo 10. Yellowknife 11, Wrigley 10. Sax Harbor 4, Inuvik 2. Baker Lake 9, Chesterfield 9 as well. And Clyde River 7 and Arctic Bay 7 as well. Our next guest is an example of believing you can do anything you want in life as long as you put your mind to it. Cree, Dakota, and Métis artist and author Jim Poitras has lived both a life of hardship but also success. At a young age, he was stolen from his family and placed in a non-native foster home, which led to difficulties later in life. However, in 1992, doors began to open for him when he started to heal and pursue an art career in BC. Fast forward to today, Jim now lives in Bad Rappenau, Germany. He has his art showcased in numerous art galleries around the world and has once shared his Indigenous culture and identity to Europeans over the years. Here's that interview. Jim, thank you for chatting with us. Can you briefly tell us why you wanted to become an artist and how that work opened many doors for you?
Thank you. When I was a little boy, about 6, 7, 8, I used to daydream all the time about being an artist because I was already gifted already. And I used to fantasize about being an artist and traveling around the world. And I knew I wasn't ready for a long time until I was in my 40s. And that's when I realized I was ready to be an artist. And that's when that all started.
Right on. And you also wrote 4 books about your life journey, including one book with your wife, Kathleen. Can you tell us why you wanted to write these books?
Okay, thank you. The first book that I want to talk about briefly is Full Circle. This is an autobiography of me and my life, growing up in foster care, being living on the streets, dysfunctional young adult, and it wasn't until I turned to my culture in my mid 30s, and my art came into my life, and then my life completely changed. Like I went to a Native Healing Center too, and that really helped a lot in the 90s.
And you didn't wait around, hey? You got these published yourself.
Yes. I had worked with 4 publishing companies, 2 non-native and 2 native, and it just never worked out. So my wife and I were talking about it and said, why don't we just do our own? So that was my first book. My second book is Believing Your Dreams, Living with Dyslexia. And this is more of an educational book, and I've co-written it with my wife because she's a registered dyslexic teacher. And it's about what it's like to have dyslexia, and it's to educate kids who have dyslexia, teachers and medical professionals, so they understand dyslexia better. And the thing is, with dyslexia, none of us are the same. We're all different, and it's just a condition. It's a learning issue, but you can overachieve, you can overcome and be successful, and I've proven that, and lots of other people have too, actually.
Yeah, no, that's a good lesson to share. And you have lived in Germany and called Germany home for many years. And while there, you have shared your native culture and identity with others. What are some of the reactions you get from Europeans when you visit with them?
Well, when I first came over, I'm retired from that, doing that work now because of my age. It was really amazing. I suffered culture shock for the first year because I wasn't used to people liking the Indians, right? I came from Canada, and so I was treated with great respect wherever I went. And here I'm natives are considered exotic, So I've worked mainly in Germany, but I've also traveled all over Europe as a dancer, flute player, drummer, singer, storyteller. So it's been an excellent journey.
That's great to hear. And you've overcome being taken during the 1950s and placed in a non-native family. It wasn't easy. Finally, briefly, Jim, what is your words of advice for people who may still be struggling out there with the same difficulties you experienced?
Well, what I've always said to all children and adults actually too, but to believe in your dreams, because dreams come true. You know how come I know? My dreams have come true. So if you just work hard and believe in what you're doing, you can overcome any obstacles. And I'm living proof of that. And that's why I've done a book on love poems that I've written 50 love poems for my wife. And I've also done my first art book ever of 82 stories and our pieces of artwork that covers my whole career. So I'll be 72 this Saturday, so age has nothing to do with anything, my friend.
Yeah.
I still feel I have lots to contribute.
No, that's great, and I'm sure we'll be following along more with your journey, Jim. Jim Poitras, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And that's your midday newscast for this Wednesday, September 25th. We'll be back again in a few hours for your evening newscast. Make sure to join us then. From everyone at APTN National News, miigwech, masicho, hi hi. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.